A very interesting press release crossed my inbox today. It's from the Business Council of Alberta. We do a fair number of stories on them. And it's about a poll that they commissioned, and the data in the poll suggests that the time has come to change strategies a little bit of direction in how Alberta does things, and particularly collaborating with Ottawa and expanding resource industries that are involved and that are serious about reducing their greenhouse gas emissions. So to discuss that with me today, we've got Executive Director Adam Legge from Business Council of Alberta. So welcome to the interview, Adam.
Thanks for having me, Markham.
Why don't you just give me an overview of the poll, and I'm particularly interested in the collaboration, with Ottawa, which is a little different approach than we've seen lately.
Yeah. Well, Markham, we're at a pretty interesting time in Canada's history in the midst of the COVID pandemic. And what we really wanted to do was two things. The first was to understand the pulse and the sentiment of Canadians as governments look to build recovery plans and budgets and throne speeches and understand their priorities. So we found that the number one priority for Canadians is economic priorities. And that's things like jobs, business growth, employment, income, et cetera. And so, that really speaks to the need for a robust plan to get us to a place of growth and hiring and employment and business reopening and whatnot. And then the second part of it was, in the midst of talk of a green recovery and building back better, we really wanted to understand where Canadians felt that the natural resource sector fit in that. And when I say natural resources, I mean very broadly: oil and gas, agriculture, forestry, mining. A very traditional, historic, and important part of our economic mix. But we want to understand where Canadians felt that fit. And what we found is that 71% of Canadians do believe that the COVID-19 recovery plans and budgets should include the natural resource sector.
And as I understand it, they also are very supportive of reducing GHGs and making sure that that recovery is environmentally friendly. We protect the environment.
Yeah, so we asked in terms of where Canadians felt the recovery should land. Should it be a green focus solely on environmental issues to the expense of jobs in the economy, or should it be balancing economics and environment? And 54% of Canadians said we want to balance the economy and the environment in that recovery. Only 26% said that it should be a green-only recovery. So it's quite clear that, as the pandemic has played out, Canadians are seeing significant impact in jobs and the economy. And so they want to still maintain a focus on the environment, but getting back on a stable economic footing, getting jobs back, getting income back is just as important to them.
Now, who would have guessed that Canadians would take a moderate centrist approach to this? A shock to us all. Yeah. Well, look, Adam, and this is, I guess, a key point I want to talk about today, and that is, it seems to me that your organization and you are positioning yourself as a moderate policy voice in Alberta, and I guess in Canada. And am I accurate in that?
Absolutely, Markham. We at our outset wanted to be purveyors of good, sound, thoughtful public policy. Our founders had all been part of organizations throughout their careers and felt there was time for a different voice, a more holistic voice, a voice that really spoke to that shared prosperity notion that built bridges. And so that's the approach that's how I operate, and that's how our founders really want this organization to go forward. And so that's what we do, is we try and find areas of common linkage. For those that really like a more confrontational approach, they're probably not going to like how we do build bridges and relationships and try and find commonalities. And will it get us everything we want every time? No, it's a more incremental approach. But getting some more thoughtful, balanced perspective out there is important, and we've always tried to bring that shared prosperity perspective to the work that we do.
Now, for folks outside of Alberta, that may appear to be similar to, the kind of policy we see at various government levels across Canada. But in Alberta, in that context, your board member, your membership is really important here, because you've got all the heavy hitters in the provincial economy. You've got Cenovus and Suncor and TC Energy and ATB and on and on and on. I mean, it really is a gold-plated list of the Alberta corporate community, and I think that's really important because those folks sit around the board, and I would assume that they have endorsed the strategy that you're pursuing.
Yeah, and I give big credit to our founders who really set the stage in forming this organization, and that's how they talked about it with people as they came on board. And we go to great pains to talk about the way in which we're going to develop our policy, that we're going to come with our policy recommendations, and the way in which we're going to undertake our advocacy efforts. And we describe it in great detail with those people who are interested in being part of it. And they generally all agree with that. They have, in many instances, other avenues which they take a different approach in terms of some of their participation in policy and advocacy bodies. But for this, the Business Council of Alberta, they recognize it's a shared prosperity perspective. It's a longer term view. We're talking about how to make life better for Albertans, and that a strong Alberta within a strong Canada is really the end game of all of this. And that the private sector is the vehicle to achieving that prosperity. So they've all really embraced that notion, and a more perhaps steadied and tempered measure of some of our advocacy efforts. And so we've had great support and great endorsement from our members on that basis.
Well, I have absolutely no doubt, Adam, that you're going to have a very positive and salutary effect on public discourse and discussion around policy in Alberta. I look forward to that. So thank you very much for doing this today.
Thanks for having me, Markham.